Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of SourceCast. I'm your host, Whitey Fox. I'm a contributor, editor, and also a podcast guy here at Source Gaming. With me here today is NantenJex.
Hello.
He is our managing editor. And I also have Spazzy, who is our article lead.
Hey, everybody.
Alright, and we're here today for the first official episode of SourceCast since our wildly successful launch during the Source Gaming 3rd anniversary live stream. And you can visit that at twitch.tv/SourceCast if you'd like to catch up on anything you missed there, by the way. How did it go? Did either of you host any sections this year?
I hosted for 8 hours, and then an additional hour later on in the American time. So I had my fill of that.
Yeah, I was there, I think, 4 hours?
You co-hosted with me.
Yeah, last 2 of yours, and then part of Trish's shift. It may have been longer. I don't know.
Yeah, you did the Ray Chase thing with me, and then the whole of the Smash section, and then the beginning of Trish's. Because you had to fill in for the Hero of Winds, who was absent because of emergencies.
Yeah, so let's say somewhere between 4 to 6 hours. So
yeah,
enough.
You guys poured your hearts and souls into it.
Yeah, I think it did. It went well.
I wasn't able to make it due to some last-minute schedule changes. I really am bummed that I missed out on the Hard 4 Games interview, and I still need to catch up on the archives myself. So got something to assign to myself this next week. What have you guys been playing, though? What's been in your consoles and or PCs?
Well, I've finally beaten Horizon Zero Dawn, which I did the other day, which is good because it's been getting in the way of all of my productivity for the last week.
How'd you like it? I haven't. That is literally in my PlayStation 4 is the next thing I'm going to play, but I just haven't had time to play much recently.
Have you played Breath of the Wild?
Oh, yes, I have.
With Breath of the Wild, I think that game... I couldn't help compare the two of them. Mm-hmm. I think that game is a better open world game because it gives you far more freedom than Horizon Zero Dawn does. You can go to places, and it tries to, push you along a tunnel, but you don't have to go that direction. You can go wherever. It's not like Zelda where you start in the middle. There's, a clear path, but you can just avoid missions and do whatever you want for ages. Mm-hmm. You can get that to the highest level before doing any mission. But things I don't like in Horizon is whereas Zelda lets you go anywhere you can see on the map and climb anything, and the only reason you can't get out of bounds is because of a big hole in a desert and an ocean that can stop you. In Horizon, if you just step too far out of bounds, the game treats it as a death and just instantly loads up and takes you back to the last save point, which really bums me out because there's not they try to avoid doing invisible walls, but there's no in-context reason for why you can't go everywhere. And the ability to not climb anywhere, not be able to climb everywhere, meant I was trying to Elder Scrolls my way through some sections where I'm abusing the hitbox to jump up mountainsides and stuff like that, which was just to avoid stuff and do stuff quickly. But I will say, whereas Zelda doesn't have much of a story, Horizon Zero Dawn has quite a good one. And they managed to balance telling a good story and having a free game where you can run around and do whatever. And I like the whole... Combat is a lot like hunting. So you get lots of stuff. You can set up traps, you can properly plan stuff. The environment is interactive, everything can break, you can cause a landslide, you can chop down trees and stuff like this, and I like all of that aspect. It makes the world feel more alive and more like it's an actual thing.
Sure, more like a living, breathing space than just a digital sandbox.
Yeah, it's definitely a good game. I really enjoyed it. I think Zelda's the better open world game, but Horizon does some things that are a lot better than Zelda, so it's a knock-up between the two. It depends what you prefer in your open world experiences.
It's definitely on my list, but yeah, it's been hard to go back to any other big open world game after Zelda, just because it spoils you with that aspect of being able to go anywhere, or that you can see. The game I played right afterward was Nier Automata, And I love that game, but it is Invisible Wall City, basically, and it was really hard to make that adjustment.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, how many times have we, a lot of people in the past that have played these big open world games, you just kind of try to break an area of the game by corner jumping or doing this or just doing something to get to an area where you're not supposed to be. And that's really just not how Breath of the Wild worked, because you're supposed to pretty much be anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's a little jarring to go back. But yeah, the trade-off in Zelda was, in order to give you that freedom, the narrative wasn't quite as involved as it probably could have been. Yeah, like I was saying, I haven't been playing too much. I've actually been pretty busy. I've been going back to the Mega Man Legacy Collection, because actually Mega Man 10 is the one game in the classic series that I never beat. So I've been playing a little bit of that. Clearly not enough, or I would have beaten it already. Got back into playing a little bit of World of Warcraft, a couple hours, here and there. I just actually reached the level cap to tell you like how casually I am playing that game.
Oh my god. What even is the level cap in that game nowadays?
The level cap in World of Warcraft now is 110.
Okay.
110.
Okay.
So
110.
Yeah. So yeah, and at the end of the last expansion, it was level 100, and I just been playing like 2 or 3 hours, basically because I've been treating, like I said, I've been really busy in my personal life with things other than gaming. And I treat it as kind of a social thing to do with friends from high school, friends from college, whatever. So been just doing some things like that. I have been playing a little bit of Smash, actually. I need to get online with Smash again and start playing more. I've been going to a video game bar probably like around every other week around where I live, and dude, there's some great Smash players there, and I'm trying not to embarrass myself.
Practicing to impress.
Yeah, I got to. And I'm trying to represent Shulk, man. Trying to be a good Shulk player, which is actually not a bad player to play as, I've found, because since if you play as somebody that's not like an overly played character, half the time people don't know what the hell your moves are, so it's fine.
Yeah, it gives you an inherent advantage for that because they don't know how to predict your moves.
Yeah, I've got a friend who's very good at Shulk, and so I have to play him all the time whenever I play Smash. So I'm used to him now.
Yeah, because you go like, for instance, I'm going there and there's like a really good Sheik player, or a real good whatever, but then there's like a really good Corrin player, and I'm like, really, a great Corrin player? I'm like, that's weird. I mean, you rep Corrin while they're still in Smash.
So, Whitey, what games have you been playing?
I've been inching my way through Sonic Mania. I'm in Oil Ocean Zone in my Sonic and Tails playthrough, and I'm in Flying Battery Zone in my Knuckles playthrough. And it's been a cold splash of water just to remember how truly bad I am at classic Sonic games. I keep getting to the boss of Oil Ocean Act 2 and getting absolutely slaughtered by it and rage quitting for about a day. So that's why my progress has been so slow so far. Have either of you checked it out yet?
Yeah, it's great. I've done a Sonic and Tails run. I've done a Knuckles run. I'm halfway through a Tails run, and I've got all the Chaos Emeralds between them, and I've nearly got all the gold medals from Blue Sphere. I have all the silver ones, so I've nearly done everything in that game.
Well, look at you, Mr. Fancy Pants, showing me up.
I have not gotten the game yet, but what I have done was actually hooked up my Sega Genesis and played Sonic the Hedgehog 1. So I'm going to go through.
Like I'm playing it.
Yeah, I'm going to go through and I'm going to play, because I do have, I have a Sega CD too. I'm going to go through and I'm going to play on native hardware all of the Sonic games in a really relaxed, casual fashion. It might be like a month before I get to it, and then I'm going to get Sonic Mania. That has been my plan for a while.
You're going to work your way up that fictional elevator that they rode at the beginning.
Yeah.
Go through all the games.
It would be interesting to play Sonic Mania having revisited those more recently and have them in more than just your distant memory, because I haven't played the original games in so long at this point.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
I guess the biggest difference is, for whatever reason, Sonic, I guess it's because Sonic 1 is released on so many systems. I feel like I've played that every couple of years, even though it's not it's not the best of the classic Sonic games, but I have revisited that one a little more recently. And Sonic CD actually wasn't in that elevator, was it?
Yeah, no, I guess not. I guess they thought it would ruin the flow because it goes 1, 2, 3 km. Maybe they thought CD somewhat slotted either after 2 or between 1 and 2 would be weird.
People always forget how much of a classic character Amy Rose is. I mean, she was before Knuckles.
Yep, she cameos in Sonic Mania, but like it's only a cameo. If they make a Sonic Mania 2, do want them to add her as like either a proper recurring role or a playable role, because she's been playable in other stuff before. And while I get why, you stick to Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, because those are the three that have all the classic stuff sorted out, if you're going to keep up this classic line, I'd like to see them take, classic Amy and show her how she could be playable in the game.
I completely agree. I really enjoyed playing as her in the Sonic Advance games myself, so I'd like to see their interpretation on that character.
Yeah, now that they kind of went back to, kind of square zero, if you want to say, and built up from the foundation that was classic Sonic to kind of recreate it. I don't mind if they add new things and they change things. Not like radical ways, but as long as you have that foundation, you can add new playable characters, you can add new mechanics, you can make it different now that you've kind of brought it back. And that's actually, speaking of Mega Man Legacy Collection, one thing that I've been liking about Mega Man 10, but also one of my biggest kind of regrets not my regrets, but like something that I think is a shame they didn't do, is now that you kind of went back to like, okay, we're going to do like this Mega Man 2 style game. Well, now you can just start like really getting crazy with stuff, now that you've brought it back. You don't have to keep making basically Mega Man 2 over and over again.
Yeah, I wonder if they would have shaken things up if there had been a Mega Man 11, like maybe moved on to a 16-bit style and tried to evolve the formula a little bit instead of just revisiting it. It's a shame that they never committed to going further down that path.
And I have to say that a lot of people are really adamant with the 8-bit style for Mega Man. But I think more than that, the problem is, and this is having, played 7 and 8 recently for my review of the Legacy Collection and just for, just to play them. The bigger problem with 7 and 8, it's not the graphics, it's the physics and the sprite size in relation to everything else. And that's what makes it not feel as much as Mega Man. 8 in particular has some wonky physics issues. It just doesn't feel right. It's hard for me to like really... It's like when you play Sonic the Hedgehog 4 and you're like, the physics are wrong. Like, I can't tell you why they're wrong. They're just wrong.
Yeah.
And Mega Man 8 is sort of the same thing.
Just controlling Mega Man, you know that he should feel a certain way, and if he feels off from that, it's going to really throw you.
Right. And then Mega Man 7, he feels more like Mega Man, but that it suffers from Super Nintendo sprite syndrome, where they're all like, we can make these huge detailed sprites, and you're like, you can make these huge detailed sprites, but then you've effectively like shrunk the size of the screen to a third of its other size, because Mega Man's, 2/3 bigger, so... So now you have less space to work with, so the platforming's not as good. I don't think it had anything to do with the graphics, and it had to do with the physics and the way... like, when you look at New Super Mario Brothers, I know not everyone's a huge fan of that series, and the physics, once again, are different. But, like, you can have a smaller Mario on a bigger screen, and it looks fine, because our graphics are good enough to make small enough, models that look good. And I feel like you could do a Mega Man with 3D models or with really detailed sprite work, and it would still feel like Mega Man, and it would be fine. That's just me though. Like I know I've just come across people that are like, oh, they just need to, especially back then, they just need to stick to the 8-bit style. I'm like, no, they just need to stick to a game that's fun to play.
I completely agree. They overcommitted to that. If they had done an 11 and it had been 8-bit style, I think that would have been the point where people would have started calling it lazy. So, going to a Super Nintendo style, if they ever do revisit the series again, which is, looking less and less likely as time goes by, I think they should really take that under consideration and see how they could do the 16-bit era of Mega Man over again. Alright, so we'll move on to some news then, I suppose. The first item on our agenda, we won't spend too much time on this because apparently it's been partially deconfirmed, but there's a rumor going around from the origin point of Destructoid's Jonathan Holmes that the Mother 3 translation has been indefinitely shelved, as well as the Rhythm Heaven series in general. And Yoshio Sakamoto has come out to say that the Rhythm Heaven series is still very much alive. They don't have anything to announce for it at the moment, but that no plans have been made for its cancellation. So he didn't say anything about the Mother 3 part of this, but at least part of this, due to official word, may not be true at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff about this rumor. I mean, he first says he heard about it 2 years ago and didn't say anything because, he wanted Nintendo to change their mind, and only came out with it now because the same source told him recently, oh no, they still haven't changed their mind on it. But See, the thing is, let's ignore Mother 3 for now. The implication that they're going off of is that that Iwata wanted them to translate the game over, and now that he's passed away, they're not bothering to translate it. Which is obviously different to the other rumours that say that they are trying to, that Nintendo of Europe are trying to translate the game. Yeah, well, that's the thing. We don't know if it actually has been translated or not, and it's sitting there where they have any plans to. But at the moment, as there's no indication of it going either way, that it's a bit more of a moot point. One person says it's not, one person says it is, whatever. The Rhythm Heaven stuff is where this kind of gets a bit janky, because this rumor came out. If you follow the timeline, he first heard this rumor just after Rhythm Heaven had come out in Japan, which was 2 years ago, and then it was last year it was localized. It was announced to be localized and launched worldwide. So the thing is, they're going to base which games they want to make on sales and what they can do with the games. And I know a lot of people see Rhythm Heaven Megamix as the final game because it's a compilation. It takes all the ones, from all the other different games and puts them together, which, is, fine. That's good. But it doesn't indicate that it's the end of the series. And I think the Rhythm Heaven Megamix, the very fact that it did really, really well in Japan, and the fact that it even got localized, and I think did, moderately okay. I haven't looked at the exact sales in comparison to the Wii and DS version. For a download-only title in America, and it being released in Europe, I think it did, not too bad.
From what I've heard, it actually did surprisingly well in America, and like you said, it was a big enough success in Japan to bring it here in the first place, so
right.
It would be odd timing for that decision, going off of one of their more successful entries in the series to nix the series in general.
And something I want to say about Rhythm Heaven as well is that it's not Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's not Xenoblade. It's I can't imagine that it takes that many resources and that much money to make a Rhythm Heaven game.
Well, the thing about Rhythm Heaven is because it's a music game, they have to hire the artists, the bands, to come up with the songs for it. But here are two things to consider. One, they didn't reuse every single mini game from past ones, so they could very easily make a Megamix 2 using the other mini games that they didn't cover. And then a couple of new ones, and they've got stuff there. Because then they just have to kind of, re-record some of the older songs. But a lot of the work is already done because they don't have to think up of new games and stuff like this. They just have to remake it all on a visual and audio standpoint. But the other thing is that Rhythm Heaven, the teams that originally did it, before Nintendo did all the reshuffling, were the same teams that did WarioWare. And they alternate. They do a WarioWare, they did a Rhythm Heaven, and so on and so forth. They didn't work on Game & Wario, so I'm guessing they did WarioWare DIY. No. DIY was done. DIY and Game & Wario were done by others, but they did do WarioWare Snapped, and then did this Rhythm Heaven game. So by logic, they should be doing a WarioWare game next.
Oh, please. As much as I like Rhythm Heaven, I would drive a dagger through its heart for another WarioWare now.
But the point I'm trying to make is that they're always making, these kind of mini-game type games. And the implication here is that, they've stopped the Rhythm Heaven series because Iwata's not there to push for it. But I don't necessarily think that's the case. They haven't killed the Rhythm Heaven series. It's not like Sin and Punishment or F-Zero or something like that.
Or Mario sports games. How weird is it that we're not getting a bunch of Mario sports games?
They're just working on another game. The team that made Rhythm Heaven is now working on another game right this second, since 2015. And once that game is done, they'll decide whether or not then to go back to Rhythm Heaven.
That makes a lot more sense than this current information, yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise you get a situation where they're just making the same games over and over again, and the only teams that do that are the Zelda team, unfortunately for them, and the 2D Mario team, who did New Super Mario Brothers for about 10 years until they decided to do Mario Maker. Every other team has set things, but they always, they do side projects. The Mario Kart team, they're always doing Mario Kart, but they also did Nintendo.
And ARMS.
Yeah, and now they've just done ARMS. The Animal Crossing team also did Splatoon, and they also did Wii Sports and Nintendo Land. And even the 3D Mario team also helped out with NES Remix and did Captain Toad. So they're always, taking breaks. And unless they're working on another WarioWare game, they might be working on another puzzle type game. But just because they're not working on a Rhythm Heaven game right this second, doesn't mean that it's cancelled forever. Because
are they the same team from Elite Beat Agents?
No, that's maybe they help, but Elite Beat Agents was an independent guy.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think there was some crossover there, but not the exact same studio.
Yeah, the implication that he's trying to give here is that Iwata is the one pushing for all these, smaller, more creative titles like Rhythm Heaven, and now that he's gone, they're buckling down to focus on, more core titles. And maybe there has been a slight change to focus on a few more core titles, but we know Nintendo hasn't completely given away this quirky nature, because you have stuff like Sushi Striker and Snipper Clips and Flip Wars, which are most of those are second party, but they're still, they're not like mainstream games or anything. And if Nintendo is still willing to fund stuff like that, they still see the point in those types of games.
Right, and especially now that all of their development studios can focus on purely working on one platform, it seems like once they get used to that development rhythm, it seems like more quirky games and side games will result from that as studios have more free time, if anything.
Those are my thoughts on this rumor.
Yeah, my thoughts are that, listen, I like Jonathan Holmes. He might be my favorite Destructoid staff member.
He's here,
definitely my favorite cast member from Road Rules Season 5. And I gotta say, I liked his hair better then. Sorry, John. He had some pretty kick-ass hair.
Oh, yeah, that hair was legendary.
Right? Anyways, I don't know. First of all, the article even was put under opinion because it was just... He said that, it wasn't even really strong enough to be a rumor. Like, he even prefaced that. He's like, I heard it, and I kind of trust the person, but not enough to say that, to even classify this as a rumor. I could see it happening. I've seen companies make weirder decisions, but it just doesn't make any sense to me as far as Rhythm Heaven goes. It might be on a slow hiatus. They might be in between doing another game, something like that. But nothing that I've seen outside of this rumor leads me to believe that. As far as Mother 3 goes, people have been saying it's coming over for years. I don't believe anybody about Mother 3. It's just a thing.
Yeah, it's a good policy at this point to just not believe anything about Mother 3 until it's on your console, downloaded, and ready to play.
I heard a rumor that I just made up, but it's a rumor, that Mother 3 is going to come to the West the first time on the Game Boy Advance Classic.
Oh, dude.
You heard it here first, folks.
Which is also going to have the legendary GBA port of Sonic the Hedgehog 1, so you can replay that in that form.
No, the Christian Whitehead and his team, they're gonna remake Sonic 1 for the Game Boy Advance. I'm pretty sure one of the team members actually did that, and that's how he got noticed. He proved it could run really well on the GBA.
Well, the GBA did have a port of Sonic 1.
Yeah, but it was terrible.
I know because I owned it. And I believe that it was the first time where you could play Sonic 1, and they included the spin dash in it, which basically breaks that game.
They also included a neat feature where you had more time to think about platforming because it ran at like 7 frames per second.
Listen, Genesis does what Nintendo don't. The problem was that the Game Boy Advance didn't have blast processing.
And the music sounded like an underwater robot gasping its last breaths.
I mean, that's true, but that is also every other Game Boy Advance game. Sorry, I love the GBA, but and in a lot of ways, the SP, the flip one, is like kind of like the ultimate Game Boy. I feel like that's like where the Game Boy line ended there because it couldn't really get any better. It's like, This is what a Game Boy is. I mean, I guess it could have used an extra 2 buttons and some better sound, but All right, so what are we talking about now? We're done. We're done talking about the Game Boy Advance. This is the Game Boy Advance section.
While we're on the topic of Sakamoto and stuff, there's the other article he said about Metroid.
Oh, true. Yeah. So Sakamoto has also said, by the way, that the future of Metroid, especially in its 2D incarnations, hinges on the sales of Samus Returns, which it seems obvious. It seems he doesn't really have to come out and say that. I think we all could pretty safely assume that was the case before this, but The fact that he's being so open about that is a little bit surprising to me.
It doesn't surprise me. They've said it a few times, and at least, as I've seen a few people point out, at least this isn't, a spin-off. Like, the future of Chibi Robo depends on the sales of Ziplash, or the future of Metroid and hinges on the sale of Federation Force or whatever. But, like, I've seen also people, just like those games, being annoyed at this. Like, that, they shouldn't be relying on the future of a series based on the sales of a game. And it's like, well, of course they are, though. Because they're going to make stuff that people want. And I think this is the thing that a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people are like, oh, why don't Nintendo make a Metroid game or a Star Fox game? Like, everyone really wants one and stuff. Which is, it's fine. But if these games come out and they don't sell well, then clearly there isn't a demand for them.
Right, here's the flip side, though. And I agree with you. I'm the sort of person that, for years, I went to comic book movies even if they sucked, because I'm like, well, I got to show Hollywood that there's a market for this, and eventually they'll make good comic book movies. And they did. And this is why I still go see video game movies, even though they suck, because I got to show Hollywood that people are willing to see them, and eventually maybe they'll make a good video game movie. But the flip side of that is that, so I don't want to support companies for making quick cash-ins or crappy games, or because then they'll just keep making more crappy games,
Right, yeah. And I mean, that's fine in order to stand up for that, but with Samus Returns is a actual 2D Metroid game.
I agree. It's what we've been asking for. But
yeah. Then it's the Metroid fans are going to buy it, so they're a moot point, because they were even if the game turns out to be average, they're still going to buy it because it's the first actual 2D Metroid game that's come out in over a decade. And Metroid fans are Metroid fans. It's everyone else out there who's going to buy it, and this kind of relates back to the. I guess I've seen a lot of people also complaining that Samus Returns isn't on the Switch and is on the 3DS, and all this, ignoring the fact that the game has been developed by an outside party and has been in development for 2 years, before anyone got Switch dev kits. So of course it was on 3DS, but also the fact that on the Switch, you're already limiting your fan base, and unless you're a Metroid fan who's willing to buy a console just for Metroid, you're going to miss out on Samus Returns until you eventually pick up a Switch for whatever reason.
Exactly, yeah. Putting it on the 3DS gives them a chance to test whether a console with a gigantic install base can sell a lot of Metroid units.
Right, plus it was built around kind of having that second screen a little bit, which is why it should also come to the Wii U. Come on, Jess.
That would be the most beautiful boneheaded move of all time.
Right? I'd be like, no, yeah, new Metroid. Can't say they didn't release a Metroid on the Wii
U. Oh, look, there's also the fact that because the 3DS has such a big user base, we're more likely to see, casual fans give the game a try, and that's what Nintendo's more, I think, focused on with this. They don't want to just see the Metroid fans buy it because they know they will. They want to make sure that casual audiences are interested in buying a Metroid game. I think that's also a dependent factor on Samus Returns and it needing to sell well in order to get more Metroids, because they know there's a fan base for it, but how big is that fan base compared to their user base? That's what they need to see. That's what they always need to see with these types of games.
Right. It's time to see if Metroid can finally expand back into the mainstream space for the first time since, I don't know, like Metroid Prime 3 would be the last time I think that most crowds outside of the hardcore Metroid community gave a shit about Metroid, so...
I mean, that was the last kind of mainline style Metroid. I mean, Prime's still kind of a spin-off, but that was kind of the last, major Metroid release. I've always said that I never played Federation Force, and I didn't have the time or money to commit to that title. And I kind of wish I had to support it a bit more, because I feel like that was never meant to be... that the sin that game committed was releasing when no major Metroids were out. If that game came out like next year, and it came out after we'd seen Metroid Prime 4 proper footage, and after Samus Returns comes out, people would have been excited about it because it would have just been a fun Metroid spin-off.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's a shame because I actually think Federation Force has a really good setup for a proper game series. And this is just the first one. A sequel could improve on all the stuff that Federation Force did wrong, and it likely won't get that now because it just didn't sell because people were angry about it, even though it was a half decent game. I'm not going to say it's the best Metroid. I'm not going to say it's amazing, but it was fun.
Well, it suffered from Kid Icarus Uprising Syndrome 2, where the worst thing about it, in my opinion, was playing it on a 3DS.
I feel like a squad-based multiplayer game based in the Metroid Prime world, where you're not playing as Samus, so you don't have kind of that baggage of it having to be exactly like Metroid, but just once again set in the universe of Metroid, could be a big hit. I just think the chibi graphics, the fact that it's on a system that's not really known for its online connectivity, just like there's a lot of hits against it. But I think if that series was to continue forward on the Switch and kind of be made into a more serious game, once again as a supplement to actual Metroids and not being presented as a Metroid game, I think it could be it would be pretty well received. I think that could have a lot of potential.
Yeah, maybe they'll give it another go once the series gets back on its feet and see if they can just use that to sort of expand the appeal rather than be the thing trying to hold hardcore fans over, which was very clearly the wrong move.
If the series gets back on its feet, that's we have to buy the games. Here's a question, and something I haven't seen a lot of people talk about. So we're kind of in this renaissance and golden age for Metroidvania as a genre. I go and I play a lot of games. I just finished Exiles and not too long ago, Axiom Verge. I'm in the middle of Hollow Knight. Ori and the Blind Forest was fantastic. There's so many great Metroidvania titles out there that are kind of scratching your itch because Castlevania and these exploration-based Castlevania games and 2D Metroids haven't been around for years and years, right?
Right.
But people are used to these being kind of Steam titles or eShop titles that cost, maybe $20. Do you think the price of this is going to detract some people who are fans of the genre, even though it is Metroid, and even though it looks very nice for a 3DS game? Are they going to say, man, I don't know, I could play all these other similar style of games, and I'm not going to be paying, full retail price for it?
I don't know. I think the Metroid brand will kind of push it.
Right. I guess it's a
price tag.
Same as saying there's plenty of indie platformers out there, but people were still buying New Super Mario Brothers at $60 a pop.
Yeah, and it's the same like if Konami released another full Castlevania game that was in that style, and it was also full retail price, people would be okay with buying that because it's Castlevania. I think the brand pushes it higher, and the company pushes the price higher rather than indie titles where they kind of have to sell it for less because they're usually shorter and they less stuff in them, and the pedigree's not there.
I mean, once again, if you look at a game like Ori and the Blind Forest, though, that game looks beautiful. It's a ton of content, some of the most amazing music, and it's still
no. Well, the pedigree's not there. Though.
Exactly.
People are more willing to spend out money for series they know than something that's new. Like they could sell the next Ori game, the new one they announced, for more than the original, and people would buy it now because people loved the original. But if they had done it with the first one, people would be more hesitant because it would be a full price game on a new IP. People were wary of that stuff. Yeah,
I agree. It's just something to think about. I thought I would throw out there.
Okay. All right. Now we can talk about Final Fantasy 15. Then
let's do it.
Let's move on to that. So. Final Fantasy 15, first off, it's getting a PC version. It's also getting a very bizarre-looking mobile port. And that mobile port or Final Fantasy 15 may be also coming to Switch, but they're being very coy about it so far. Have either of you played Final Fantasy 15? How do you feel about it in general, by the way?
I haven't played it because I was waiting to see if it would come to Switch. I only just got my PS4, a few months ago, and so I didn't get any chance to play it. But I was like, I felt like it's the sort of game that, well, I can't say it's the sort of game that would come to Switch, but Square, at least at the beginning, seemed to be one of those early developers who were very supportive of the Switch. So I felt like Final Fantasy 15 is one of those it's one of those titles that being from their main flagship franchise that I could see them trying to work onto the system. It obviously didn't happen. It might be probably is a power reason that didn't happen. But
I don't know.
I'm sure they want it on the Switch.
You say it's a power reason, but so there's like a Secret of Mana remaster or complete remake coming out, right? But it's coming out for PC, PlayStation Vita of all consoles, and the PS4. So you clearly the Switch would have the power to run that, but that's not coming. So I think a lot of
theory behind that.
Okay, I think a lot of third parties are still a little hesitant to go all in on the Switch, and a lot of them probably are just getting used to the architecture of it too, so they aren't really great at porting to the Switch yet.
Well, right, yeah, no, I'm sure it's both of those, and I don't know what engine the new Secret of Mana remake is running on, so I don't know, how easy it would be to port over to.
It's a Vita game, dude.
Yeah, no, but like some engines take longer than others. Sometimes it takes months to port, sometimes it takes days.
Is that your thought on DuckTales too? You're like, I don't know, man. The Disney Afternoon Collection. I don't know what engine that's running on. I don't know.
No, that's slightly different because the engine for that we know works on 3DS. So that should have been on 3DS. But anyway, no. My point is, my theory with Secret of Mana is that they just released the Secret of Mana collection on the Switch, which is just
and they don't want to cannibalize it.
Yeah, basically. Like they don't want to release it and then make people who just bought the game upset that they're releasing a better version of the best game on that system, on that thing. And they also know that if they announce it for the Switch, people just might stop buying the collection. Secret of Mana 2 for the Switch is something that will definitely see happening, because I think the Switch is a perfect system for it. And clearly, when you look at their Twitter feed and every single comment is like, where's the Switch version?
Yeah.
And everyone is questioning this. This is something that will come out, but half a year after it launches on PS4.
I'll say this about Final Fantasy 15. First of all, I haven't got it because A, I haven't had the time, mostly. B, I wanted to wait to see if it would come out, or when a PC version would come out, and when a Switch version would come out. Because I'd rather play a big open world game like that on one of those two systems, because I know once it comes on PC, there's going to be mods, there's going to be just more stuff to it. Because there always are on these sort of games on PC.
Maybe there will be a mod that actually makes the story coherent.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be a mod that replaces, every character in the game with Sephiroth, and that's the only one I'll play. But it doesn't matter. It's just it's for fun. But the other thing is though, I do, and for a Switch version is because I feel like from Breath of the Wild and some of the other games that I've played, I Am Setsuna kind of falls into this too. I think games that are kind of long, meaty games, anything that's kind of RPG-esque or open world, I feel like works on a handheld for me because I get my game time in when I can,
Yeah. You can take it with you and stuff, and you get to play it whenever.
And I actually think Final Fantasy 15 would sell rather well. I don't know about the Pocket Edition, although watching the Pocket Edition, if it really does have the same content, if the Pocket Edition comes to Switch and they beef up the content, because it already looks very, very similar, but basically be identical, but just with this graphic style, I'd almost want to buy this better because I think it's more charming. Because I think the Final Fantasy, what they basically do is they take anime designs and make them look like real human beings. Is kind of off-putting to me, but this is super charming.
I know a lot of people would be mad about it, but if they did take the Pocket Edition and, up the polygon count on all the models and stuff like that, but gave it like the cel-shaded look, a bit like, Wind Waker or something like that, and then release that as like Final Fantasy 15 Switch, I would actually quite like it. I know it's not the realistic hunky anime boys that I know a lot of people buy these games for specifically, but if it's the exact game with very similar gameplay styles, just a different perspective in graphics, then that's fine with me. That's fine with me, and it makes the Switch version feel more unique as well.
Yeah, it's like with the new Dragon's Quest game, where the 3DS version, you basically have what looks like a PS1 RPG and then like a Super Nintendo RPG, and then you look at the PS4 and Switch versions, and it's more of a modern take on it. And I think that's actually pretty creative to see the same game from different, vantage points. Basically, I would 100% be down with that.
Yeah, I'd honestly almost be more interested in the mobile version coming to Switch than the main version. I have a lot of gripes with Final Fantasy 15. I played through the whole thing, and then a few weeks later, I just thought, why did I do that? That wasn't worth most of my time that I put into it.
I would say that another point for it, and I was starting to talk about this earlier, but I didn't really get around to it, is that I think Breath of the Wild has created a user base on the Switch for big open world games, and we'll see if that holds up. We'll see this holiday with Skyrim and with Xenoblade, and both of those aren't perfect examples because Xenoblade games, the art style's so anime, it might throw some people off, and also they're the sort of games that are very complex. Like the UI is like disgusting looking, but still it's an open world game. And the second thing is Skyrim's also not a perfect example because it's like over half a decade old at this point. It's just another Skyrim port. But I think both of those will help us see whether or not it's true that Breath of the Wild has created this install base already on the Switch. And if both of those games do well, you'll see, I think, more RPGs and more open-world sandbox games come to the Switch. And like I said, I think they're a good fit. I haven't played Final Fantasy 15. You don't seem like you're a big fan there, Whitey.
Oh, no. I just... honestly, the most distressing part of any of this news was that the disease is spreading further than it already had. But like I said, the Pocket Edition, it has the opportunity to remake the game from the ground up in a really neat way. So I'd be more interested in checking that out than going back to the original on any sort of port. So I kind of hope the Switch gets the mobile version. I think I'm probably one of the only people who feels that
I'm
way.
with you. I'm with you on that. Like, because I think having, and also that would give some people that are PS4 or Xbox One owners that also own a Switch a reason to rebuy it, because it's not the same game exactly. Hey, I can kind of play through the game, but it'll be a little bit different. And that'll help too.
I'm okay with either version. Like, as long as it comes to the Switch, I want to see bigger games, bigger titles coming to the Switch. And Resident Evil Revelations port is a good one. Now we just need 7 or the remakes. And from Square, Dragon Quest 11 obviously in this. And if this does well, maybe Kingdom Hearts? It's on every other system, come on.
And the funny part is, even though Kingdom Hearts hasn't ever had a very strong presence on Nintendo consoles, there's a few games on the handhelds, but never anything huge. There's a big overlap between Nintendo fans and Kingdom Hearts fans. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, it is. It's Disney. It's the Disney effect, which is why the Pocket, doing graphics of the Pocket Edition might appeal more to Nintendo fans. I wouldn't be surprised if World of Final Fantasy came to the Switch because it fits that style, and I think people would enjoy it just based on looks. I think it appeals to more people. Well,
and that game has more of a connection to the past of Final Fantasy, which
that
still is where a lot of Nintendo fans are in their affection for that series. So that would be a really thoughtful port if they can get around to that.
Okay, so the next one on this list was Pokemon. The Pokemon Gold and Silver are getting special box download codes.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about this because it's just the Virtual Console re-releases of Pokemon Gold and Silver, and you can buy a tiny little cute-ass box of either of them with the original artwork, and it has a 3DS download code and a little manual inside. Yeah. I just think it's neat. I don't know that I'll even buy Gold and Silver again on the Virtual Console. I very recently revisited that game as Soul Silver on the DS, like within the past 2 years. And I think that Soul Silver is the best Pokemon game ever made. So it's a little hard of a sell to get me to go back to the originals, but I'm glad they're getting their chance in the limelight anyway.
Yeah, I expected them to happen eventually. I don't think I'm going to get them. Because, like you said, at Heart Gold I have, and if I really wanted to play Gold again, I'd just play that one because it's going to be far better. And I tried, I played Red and Blue when they all came out on the Virtual Console, and it was fun. but like I didn't finish it because I was like, okay, this is a bit dated now.
Yeah, it was a little hard to go back to those old games, especially with just, the battle system is still mostly intact, but so many quality of life features have been made to that series since its inception that it was a challenge to get used to that.
Well, one thing I'm wondering about is, did Red and Blue also get boxed versions?
No.
Or was that a Japan?
This is a first.
I think they did in Japan, because I remember seeing them. Red, blue, and green, and yellow all got box versions.
Oh, okay.
So I guess those must have done well over there. Because these gold and silver ones are coming out worldwide.
Exactly, yeah. So it does seem like a little bit of a missed opportunity to not have brought over the red and blue ones to America, because I think that's still where a lot of the mainstream attention lies for those games. You could see that back when Pokemon Go came out, how nobody was upset in the mainstream audience that none of the other generations were included. They just wanted those red and blue monsters, and I think the gold and silver ones are going to fall on deaf ears as far as capturing new attention. But I don't know, I could be wrong about that.
Well, they kind of have. There's no evidence that third generation Pokemon are in there. Those are the ones that you're going to have to see whether or not it brings back fans. Like I went back and played it for a bit when Gen 2 came out, but I was by that point kind of over Pokemon Go.
No, I'm not really a huge Pokemon fan, so, I guess.
Speaking of things coming to the Switch and such, then we'll move on to the Telltale games, which Batman Seasons 1 and 2, as well as Guardians of the Galaxy, have been announced as coming to Switch. And that's fine. I'm glad they are, and this seems like the perfect kind of platform for Telltale. I'm part of that crowd that's just sort of over Telltale's output. I don't think they could really win me back with much of anything, let alone these measly ports at this point. How about you guys?
I mean, I'm kind of glad that Telltale's back to Nintendo systems. They started on PC. A lot of their early games were on PC. But when they first jumped to console, apart from one random CSI game on PS2...
It was all WiiWare, baby.
Yeah, they were all on the WiiWare. Sam & Max, Strong Bad's cool game for attractive people.
Still the best game they've made.
These are all games that originally came out on the Wii first and were Wii exclusive for a short time before coming out to PC and then much later on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360.
Right, the Monkey Island games also were on WiiWare. And
yeah,
that's
Tales of Monkey Island.
And this is my point. I wonder if, because some games like World of Goo let you use the Joy-Cons as an approximated pointer, if you can do that, I will be much more inclined to get it. Because I think playing Telltale games with a twin-stick joystick is awful. It is awful, and if that's the way you're playing these games and you don't know what you're doing, you're a terrible human being. What are you? I can't even.
Whoa, buddy.
You see, so here's the thing. I feel like
adventure games, they come from this point-and-click background, and they're meant to be played on a PC with a mouse and keyboard. I know that they've kind of changed things a little bit to make it easier, so it's not just point here and go here, but it's like playing an RTS on a console. It's not. Come on, get out of here, guys.
So here's the thing, right? I think one of the big reasons why Telltale, a lot of their bigger games like The Walking Dead and Jurassic Park and Wolf Among Us skipped out on Nintendo platforms is because they originally started when it was they had moved over to high definition and the Wii was still standard definition, and so stuff like The Walking Dead and Jurassic Park, they just weren't going to play on it unless they're in a worse quality. And then the Wii U obviously was a disaster for third parties, and Western ones didn't particularly do well. So I think at that point it just wasn't worth them doing, which is why a lot of their more, Game of Thrones and Walking Dead 2 and Wolf Among Us skipped out. But Minecraft, obviously, there was a big push to get Minecraft on the Wii U at the very end, which is why story mode eventually came out to it. But Minecraft is, on everything, it will sell on whatever, so that's why it's the one outlier. But now that the Switch is out, and it's a proper, a more successful HD console, the Telltale are just going to move back to it, because...
Yeah, the only thing that's going to hold the Switch back, I think, just in general, is still going to be it's not gonna be able to just push certain games graphically. It's not gonna have the processing power still, and also I feel like not having the analog triggers, it might cause some problems. But it's still got much closer parity, and that's the thing too. Nintendo's gonna continue to keep having closer parity because the gap between high end and low end just gets lower each generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, engines more and more, they accommodate, high end and low end ports of things, so it doesn't make as much of a difference. And also, Telltale, like you said, they moved away from Nintendo consoles because they were outpaced by technology. But I think that Telltale is reaching a point right now where they can't afford to make their kind of games with much higher production value anyway. So this could be a good new home for them, if anything.
By the way, since this is a podcast and we can talk about whatever we want, I'm just going to take a minute out right now to say I haven't played The Wolf Amongst Us, but it blows my mind that became a popular thing because I have the very first issue of Fables that came out in 2002,
oh, cool.
I think. Yeah, it was my sophomore year, and I was a big fan of that comic for years. I collected every issue for the longest time, and the spin-offs, because they had but it was just this really niche comic series from Vertigo Comics that nobody knew about, and then they made a thing about it, and now people know who Big D Wolf is, and it's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy how stuff like that works. You
might be glad to know that I literally just started that game, although I'm probably going to restart it because I was drunk when I started it, and I want to remember what's going on.
I will mail you the comics if you want. That way you'll have it back. I was a big fan of the comics.
I'm definitely interested in the comics, and I think it's a really interesting idea and concept. So I might look into it more.
Here's a really fun story, by the way. Just once again as an aside. So in the mid 2000s, the dude that wrote the comic was pitching the series as a TV show. The dude, Bill Willingham, was pitching the series to different networks as a TV show because it's like you said, it's an interesting concept. So first he went to NBC and they were like, "Oh, we're so into it." They ordered a script and all this, and then they said, "Yeah, we don't want to go forward with it." And then a year later, they made Grimm. And then afterwards, he went to ABC, and the same thing happened, and they said, "Nah, we don't want to move forward with it." And then a year later, they came out with Once Upon a Time because it's all based off of stuff that he doesn't have the rights to. It's all
so they can just make their own versions of it and stuff.
Right. So they're like, "That's a great idea. We're not going to pay you and just make our own version."
Oh, that's devious.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah. That is quite devious.
Which is part of the reason I will never watch either of those two shows.
Whitey, did you have any more thoughts on Telltale?
No, I've been out of their purview for a while. I really liked Tales from the Borderlands, although I still need to finish that.
That's a good one.
I got the end of episode 3 or so I need to go back and mop that up at some point. But yeah, I just I'm not much of a Batman fan. I want to be, but he's a little oversaturated lately for me, and I don't like the grim, dark interpretations of Batman very much, so that doesn't really entice me. And also, Guardians of the Galaxy, I still haven't even seen the second movie, so I'm a little bit behind the curve on that. But
I really wanted to talk about more fairy tales and how they're public domain and people can do whatever they want with them, but fine. I'll say that for my own podcast with hookers and blackjack.
I was just going to say that I want Telltale games to do well on Nintendo, because I'd love to see them partner up to try and bring a older Nintendo IP back. Because Nintendo has a whole bunch of IPs that, because they kind of did their own weird sort of variant on point-and-click games with the Nintendo Fairy Tail series. And if they're going to ever revive that, I'd love to see Telltale do it, because it's...
I'm not actually familiar, and I'm pretty good with Nintendo stuff. Clearly, as part
of that's news to me. What are you talking about?
What is the Nintendo Fairy Tail series?
It's it was a Japan-only series called Shin Onigashima. If you know that, is part of it. It was the first game in the Nintendo Fairy Tail lineup.
Okay, so it was a Famicom series.
Yeah, so so essentially there's 4 very quick Nintendo history lesson. So there's essentially 4 games in this series, but one of them's more like a spin-off. So there's Shin Onigashima, which was a 2-part story all based around Japanese mythology, where you played as Dombe and Hikari, and you travelled and you met a bunch of characters from Japanese myths as you had to go to the Island of Demons, known as Shinonigashima, to rescue your adoptive parents. And then they made a spin-off. They made a sort of spin-off retelling, which because in the game you get 3 animal buddies: a dog, a monkey, and a bird. And then for the Super Nintendo on the Satellaview, they released like special episodes where you played as those 3, and then the final mission from their point of view. And then they actually released that as a physical cartridge. Then they made a slightly lesser known game called Yu Yuki, which is the next in line, which does Chinese mythology, and that one is the one that's based on Journey to the West with Goku as the main character, and is done by one of the animators of Dragon Ball, which is really interesting. And then they released a spin-off called Time Twist, where you play as a guy who travels through time and has to stop a demon, and you fight baby Jesus and kill Hitler. That one's the weird spin-off that's not based on
I want that
fairy
one.
tales and stuff. And then on the Super Nintendo for the Satellaview again, and this one's I think it's the most interesting because it's the one people know the least about. Mm-hmm. They made this story about this young boy who moves into the countryside and meets this ghost girl, and Nintendo were really trying to push it to be like the flagship franchise of the Satellaview and be like a big major series. But because they released it on the Satellaview, it did really poorly. Like, it released they were trying to basically do it to revive interest in the Satellaview, and it didn't work.
Right. It looks like they wanted something that was episodic content that they could keep people with.
Yes.
Which right now, like, hey, we're talking about Telltale, is a great way to distribute games. So maybe
that was exactly it. It was them doing it back in the day, and which is why I think Telltale would be the perfect publishers to reinvent it. They could even do their, a completely new story under the Nintendo Fairy Tale banner. I've always thought, what if they did British fairy tales or American fairy tales?
You know what game I would love to see Telltale make, like a point-and-click style adventure game? Like, think about Tales of the Borderland, right? But F-Zero. Just like following Captain Falcon around, actually doing bounty hunter stuff, couple races. I don't know why, but I think that would be like my number one choice for that. I just think it'd be really funny.
I think I could see the guy over at Telltale being really interested in doing something like that. Who doesn't love Captain
I think stylistically Falcon? It could be like unlike anything else because it's so like out there and like anime, but like superhero and race. F-Zero has so many different like aspects to it. It's such a crazy mismatch of just stuff when you really look at it, you know?
Yeah.
That would be a really fun way to revisit the story mode from F-Zero GX and still have maybe Amusement Visions do the racing segments in between and have Telltale do the story segments. That would work out really cool.
Yeah, and I think that would be a good way to differentiate it from, other games, from Fast Racing RMX or Wipeout or whatever. Because part of what separates F-Zero from those games is that it has these bright, colorful, fun characters and weird backstory and stuff like that. So I think Nintendo should really lean into that, and I think you could make F-Zero something special again.
Noir Zero.
Yeah, make F-Zero great again.
Yeah, I get real frustrated with Miyamoto when he says there's no new direction to take F-Zero in. It's like, you just aren't looking, dude. You don't care.
Yeah, clearly there is. All you need to do is ask Telltale.
Yeah, and you know what? And he's always all like, but look at all these fun directions we can take Star Fox in. Don't! Just make a Star Fox game!
Shall we move on to Source Gaming stuff then?
Let's talk about Source Gaming.
Sure, yeah. So first we've got a guest article from Big Boss Man 538 where he basically constructs a Smash Fighter out of everyone's favorite Blue Knight Shovel Knight from Yacht Club Games is... Oh, geez. One of the best indie games ever made. So, there was a lot of speculation that Shovel Knight would make it in as DLC, especially when the amiibo came out, I remember. So it's neat to see that expanded upon. He really goes into some good detail here.
There is no way that Shovel Knight will not be in an Indie Smash clone, like, yesterday. Like, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm like half expecting him to show up in Indie Pogo because that kind of makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Because everyone's always jumping and he can bounce off of people. But I mean,
That-
they haven't
that
announced
actually
it,
is-
but I'm expecting it.
Yeah, like Shovel Knight is a great game, but he's also the king of like indie crossovers. It's
Yeah.
like, hi, I'm Shovel Knight. You might know me from such games as Indivisible, Ghost Police,
And you're-
Blaster Master Zero, Road to Redemption, Move or Die, Star Mazer, Runbow. Sorry, I'm just reading off his.
Yeah, we don't need to go off all of the Shovel Knights.
Yeah, I'm done. I don't
Cameos.
even need to do it anymore.
Yeah. So about this like specific article, I was the one who was moderating it and put it on the site and stuff like that. And I mean, Shovel Knight. I run the Dream Smasher series, and Shovel Knight is a character who I was gonna do originally because he was quite a popular request in the Smash Ballot days. But I was trying to lean away from third party for the time. And I think the moveset he's got is pretty much what I was, kind of expecting him to do. It's a bit like Mega Man in the fact that you just have all these different sort of moves and talismans and stuff that you can use. The abilities you can get from the... you don't get them from the Knights, but every level has a new ability you can unlock. And so Shovel Knight has this wide variety of stuff that can easily work. A recovery, a side smash, projectile weapons for the standard B, and so on. He doesn't really have any sort of unique gimmick, but I think as a knight, we don't really have a knight in Smash. We have swordsmen, sure, but they're all like either... You have Link who's a hero, and Shulk who's from the future, and everyone else is essentially a prince. You have no one who is just a knight.
We don't really have anyone. We don't have anyone wearing plate armor.
Exactly. So Shovel Knight actually does... He fits in the style, but he's also brings across a unique niche.
Right, and I believe he is the first shovel user. Could be wrong. I have to think about it.
Villager uses a shovel.
That's true. He already uses Shovel Knight's main gimmick in his moveset, so I don't,
Yeah, that's just taken care of. No need.
But no, I think it's a good Dream Smashers. I think it's a very safe one. But I think that if you want an accurate Shovel Knight moveset, then this is probably the best one you can go for. And I know he's working on a sequel which looks at potential items and assist trophies, etc. So, look forward to that whenever he sends it to me.
Well, next we'll talk about the Source Gaming Choice article, the collected thoughts. The Anvil put this together, and it includes our thoughts as a staff unit on our favorite canceled games that never came to fruition. Was I the only one on this podcast that's in this? Looking at the list, it seems to be the case.
Yep. Yeah, I never wrote it up because I was thinking Mother 64, but I'm like, I don't know, Mother 3. So I never actually got around to writing it. That would have probably been my addition to that.
That's a damn good pick, honestly. I chose Glover 2, just because it really is my answer for it, but also I could rest assured that nobody else was going to give that answer. So, I really want to see Glover 2 come back in some way. I think Hasbro must still be sitting on that license, or keeping it under their thumb, as the case may be. And, I really liked the original Glover. It's a rough Nintendo 64 platformer, and it would have been the perfect kind of game to get refined further in a sequel, and it's just really sad to me it never got the chance.
Plus, I like to think of Glover as kind of, the tale of what happened to Master Hand before he finally
When I was younger, I didn't know any better, I legitimately thought that Glover was Master Hand. Because I had played Glover, and then I played Smash, and they were both on Nintendo 64. And I was like, oh, sweet, Glover's here, but why is he the villain?
Yeah, that's the kind of logic leap that only makes sense to you when you're a kid.
Yeah, looking at a lot of the games here, there's a lot of reasons. I feel like Wolfman's pick of Silent Hills is another good one. I feel like you could just do a whole article on canceled Konami games. Another one I kind of wanted to see, although I think I heard it's not that great and it's available in some playable forms, was the Xbox Live Arcade and WiiWare Bonk title that Hudson Soft was working on before they got bought up by Konami. Because Hudson Soft had about 10 different games in development. and they were bought out by Konami, and Konami canceled all of them, including, and that's another one I could have talked about, the 3DS Bomberman game that looked pretty good, that also got canceled.
See, I didn't contribute to this article because I couldn't think of anything. I was going to do it, and I was like looking at it, and I was like, see, I wanted to pick a cancelled game that was like Star Fox 2, where we know it was in development, and then, you know, they got rid of it completely. Because the thing about a lot of the choices here, some of them, you have, like, Push did Mystical Seed of Courage. Well, that became the Oracle games. So it wasn't completely
right, or the Conquer
cancelled.
Game that Anvil talked about. I'm like, I'm like, if the game you're talking about existed, we probably wouldn't have had Conquer's Bad Fur Day, which is a better game. Although, you know what I just thought of right now, because I also didn't contribute to this article, because originally I was saying I'd probably have done Mother 64, because I would have loved to have seen how that game would have been on the N64. I would have loved to have seen a full 3D Mother game, you know? Yeah. I know it became Mother 3, but it's still it's the same story, but it wouldn't have been the same game. But you know what I would have loved to have seen is, I know people will say Mega Man Legends 3, but Mega Man Universe, which was basically Mega Man Maker before Mario Maker was a thing. And I don't know what happened to it, but I would have loved to have seen what that would have been like.
I think it just got cancelled along with all the other Mega Man stuff in development at the time.
Yep.
It's just a unfortunate side effect of Inafune leaving, I guess. They cancelled all the Mega Man games because there was no one who wanted to helm them, which is what I think happened. I think he was the director of like 3 separate Mega Man projects, and then he decided to leave because of bad blood with Capcom, and Capcom had no other director who could take over them projects, and so they just had to go because everyone was either working on something else. Like, I don't think there's any vindictive reason to throw away all those resources other than you don't have anyone to manage it.
I don't even know. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are just canceled because I feel like Japanese companies can be like that sometimes, where they're like, fine, you don't want to work for us, we're throwing your work out. Maybe that's just me.
Hey, you know what I want to say? You know what I want to say here? I thought of one now.
Okay.
Let's get to Super Kid Icarus. It was mentioned once in Nintendo Power in one issue. No screenshots, nothing else. It was just mentioned by name as something that was going to be announced soon, and then it was never revealed.
Wow, that's the first I'm hearing of that, actually.
I think if that game was made, Kid Icarus as a franchise would be in a completely different place.
Oh yeah, it would be kind of like Metroid.
It would be exactly like Metroid because Metroid had the first game on the NES on the Famicom, and then it had the Game Boy sequel, which really refined the gameplay a lot, just like Metroid. But it never had that breakout third game, and I think Super Kid Icarus could have been that game.
Yes, I agree. But it's when I just looked at my Pit Amiibo, I was like, oh yeah, that is a thing, apparently.
Well, it sounds like the Anvil might want to put together a sequel to this article soon. This is really getting the juices flowing. And I'll mention one more thing in this segment, and it's a little bit of a plug, tiny bit for me, but also for our friends over at Unseen64. You can go on Amazon and buy their book, which is Games You'll Never Play, and it's a very comprehensive... it's some of the same content from their site, but it's rewritten by new writers and with new research that's been more updated. And I have a handful of articles in the book. I don't have any stake, I don't get anything if you guys buy it. But if you like canceled games, it's another really cool resource to check out.
There was one other article we were going to discuss, weren't we?
Yeah, Wolfman's article, Holism, the Wind Waker's cel-shaded graphics.
I just want to say that if people aren't reading Holism, the series of articles, then you should, because it's probably one of the most well-written articles on the whole site.
I'll say this, I think a lot of our more kind of research, in-depth articles like this kind of get overlooked. Wolfman's articles in particular, if you guys don't read them out there, they're always worth reading, because he puts a lot of time and effort and research into it. He's a smart guy, he's a good writer. I think you should write them. There's not much I can really, talk about when it comes to this. I think you should just go read it for yourself.
Exactly. He basically covers all the points that we could make in the article because it's very comprehensive, very very thorough, and he, like you guys are saying,
Yeah.
I'll echo that he does a great job in this one. It's one of his better entries too.
Yeah. It's essentially it's all about how, the Wind Waker's graphics and stuff, like, really push that game and make it fresh and dynamic and...
Right, the benefits of kind of this unique visual style, why it's important, why it was important to the game, why it's important to the industry to embrace sort of graphical entities such as this one, things like that. It's like you said, it's worth your time, guys. And if you have some time, you should go ahead and read it.
Take the damn time and do some reading.
Yeah, man, I'm tired of you guys. You guys don't even like to read in videos. We have our Game and Facts. People are always like, "Why don't you do somewhere you read them?" I'm like, just no, you read them. You read these. We made a video for you. Now read it.
Well, we'll see what happens there in the future. I need to. Now that the live stream is over and done with, I need to get back into a swing of making stuff. And
yeah, I think Game and Facts in particular is just kind of NantenJex and I's baby. It's kind of our. It came from kind of both of us. It's kind of our series, and I think we need to get back to it. I'm not sure how many of you out there are fans of it. And we do appreciate feedback, and even stuff like, "Hey, we would like voiceover." It's stuff we do take into consideration.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, we are. We've been talking about it and stuff, and seeing examples, and demo reels, and whether anything gets made will come down to what happens to the series in the future. But that's another talk that's got nothing to do with this.
Well, that brings us nicely into our next topic.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you guys what you're working on next for the site, so it sounds like you're gearing back up for some more additions to that series. Any articles you guys have planned in the near future that you want to hype people for?
This video will be out by the time this comes out, so I don't mind talking about it. But me and Spazzy last week recorded a character corner for Punch-Out. And I just want to say I was recording the footage to use for it today. And I forgot how fun that game is. Punch-Out.
Oh, it's so good, yeah. I
really fun.
That's definitely a top 5 franchise that I want Nintendo to work on. Like, if you ask me, like, hey, what 5 franchises would you really like to see Nintendo come out with a game in the next year or two that hasn't been announced? Like, Punch-Out easy.
So, like, I'm just playing it and I'm like going through it and I'm like, I don't have the Doc Lewis stuff because they never released it in Europe, so I couldn't get any footage of that, unfortunately. But just playing through and I like fighting Aaron Ryan was very fun again, and it's very topical considering the big boxing match that happened over the weekend. So I was like, I was thinking of that while beating the crap out of Aaron Ryan.
Oh, it's some weird Irish dude and he's boxing. I can see how you would make that comparison.
That fight's tough, by the way. I was stuck on that for a good long time during my most recent playthrough.
Well, the only one I lost for footage was Sandman. He beat me down, and I was like, after losing a few times, I was like, okay, that's enough footage.
Yeah.
Failing.
Aaron Ryan is not a hard fight, but he's very counterintuitive to the way that you played Punch-Out previously.
Yeah,
You have to attack him and then...
You have to hit him before he hits you every single time, counter-attacking him for, like, everything. That's how you beat him.
Right, exactly, because you're used to just dodging and counter-attacking. That's, like, how you've been conditioned to play Punch-Out. So it's not that he's hard, it's that he's so different from every other fighter.
Yeah, he subverts your expectations. I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're exactly right.
That's why that character's great game design. And
it is very good.
Well, I mean, he was in the Super Nintendo Punch-Out and Super Punch-Out, but he was just like a Honda Piston Hurricane clone in that one. So this is like, he was basically created as a new character for this one with his play style, and I think very smart game design, very smart.
So yeah, that's coming out Monday, which will already be out by the time this comes out. So watch it. Go and watch that, and I promise we won't take nearly as long for the next character corner. Because I actually got messages literally after we recorded Spazzy. Like that week, I got some messages saying, when is the next character corner? It's not a series you've given up on. I was like, we literally just recorded one. So you can look forward to that.
Yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot of series that kind of get waylaid. We have a lot of video and article series. I really want to do another the Attack of the Clone series, which is where I just look at a game and then look at games that are essentially clones of that game that I think have some merit. I haven't done one of those in a while. I don't have too much in the direct pipeline that's coming up soon. I have some reviews and other things on the horizon, though. You'll see them when they get up there.
Yeah. we'll take it as it comes. And as for myself, I'm focusing a lot of my energy on getting the podcast stuff off the ground right now. I'm also... A lot of my work here has just been editing. I feel like whenever I sit down and maybe start thinking about an article, I usually find about 3 or 4 other people's articles that need some attention, so I wind up doing that with my time instead. But doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and speaking of the next podcast, this will be up on Tuesday when you're hearing this, and you can hear it next time on Tuesday, September 12th, so we'll be on a bi-weekly upload schedule from now on.
Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed episode 0. Have either of you had a chance to listen to the finished file, or do you find it weird to listen to your own voices?
Sometimes I find it weird to listen to my own voices.
I don't.
When you aired it, I was asleep, so I didn't get a chance to listen to the premiere of it.
I honestly listen to our podcast and audio at work, whether or not I'm on it. I love the sound of my own voice. I don't know what you're talking about.
In the meantime, while we're waiting, you can find the website at sourcegaming.info if you've somehow come across this podcast out there in the wild, and you can follow the site on Twitter as @allsourcegaming. Spazzy, where can people find you on the internet, aside from this site?
You can find me on Twitter. It's probably the best way to contact me, at 8bit_Spazzy.
All right, NantenJex, where can people find you if they want to keep up with your work specifically?
The best place to find me, to contact me and stuff, apart from our Source Gaming Discord, which you can ask to join, or just find a link, is through my Twitter, which is @MrNintendo. I do a lot of, obviously, video content and stuff. There are a bunch of videos I got in the pipeline that I'm debating when to release and when to finish and work on. So pay attention to our YouTube channel, which is just Source Gaming, and you know it's ours because it's got the little floppy disk with the SG on in the middle. So subscribe to that and keep up with all of our stuff. Look for that character corner, look for any discussions or reviews or news that we break. And yeah, we're nearly at 10,000 subscribers. Maybe you could be our 10,000th subscriber, so
if you are our
get to it.
10,000th subscriber, I will send you a key to a Steam game. It could be a really bad game. I haven't decided what, because I just decided this right now.
Ride to Hell Retribution, motherfuckers.
Bad Rats 2.
It's like they sent me the DLC for Dragon Age Origin, but not the game.
Alright, well, you can find me on Twitter as @PreposterousYT. I also do other podcast projects. You can find that stuff as @PopUFO Network. I'm working on a really interesting thing. I'll go ahead and tease it here, I guess, because no one will care anyway. I'm doing a podcast with an old partner of mine about the cartoon Sonic Underground, and that'll be coming out within the next week or so.
Is there really enough to talk about for that particular Sonic?
Send me that. Sonic Underground is something that I've been meaning to rewatch. I've been super into researching the Sonic the Hedgehog comics recently because I never got a chance being brought up in the UK to read them. And it's something I'm really interested in because they're so absurd. Have either of you read the Sonic Archie comics?
Yeah.
From time to time. I think one of the most ridiculous things about the Sonic Archie comics is that the tone and characters and everything of it shifted so much because it ran for a decade, for over a decade. Jeez.
There's just some really strange plot lines. Knuckles turns green. Tails' parents start a revolution to put democracy over the monarchy. So Eggman creates a satellite that causes everything to go in reverse, and Sonic runs through things in reverse, and that's how he gets his adventure design. Like, the space-time continuum fucks him up, and he turns into his adventure thing. Sonic gets his billionth ring and enters like a Space Odyssey 2001 Space Odyssey type weird thing where he becomes one with the cosmos or something, and it actually saves him from death at one point. Because
and the Mega Man comics that Archie did was actually also pretty good, but didn't last very long.
I hear they're great. It makes me laugh because it's Sonic.
Yeah.
And it's like the most absurd storylines, even past the Ken Penders stuff and his wonderful plot lines of Knuckles' mum getting remarried and just weird stuff with Knuckles.
Yeah, it sounds bonkers. I've dropped in here and there on those comics. I'm sad to see them end, but I Man, I am apparently missing a lot if I didn't even know any of that.
But yeah, all right, there we go. That's it. That's the end segue, the random bullshit at the end.
Yes. Nice. Very good segue there.
All right. Well, good show. I think the last one turned out well, and I think this was an improvement over that, so we're on an upward trajectory here. And we'll see you folks in 2 weeks for another episode of Super SourceCast. I'm Whitey Fox, signing off.